Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Optimal Health for Busy Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Julian Hayes II, back at it again with another fascinating individual who is doing a myriad of cool and interesting things. We've been talking for a long time, and I was like, you know what? I need to finally hit record. And what really attracted me to this gentleman here is that I was just cruising YouTube, as I always do. And one of the things I love to do is just look at different travel content. I watch even videos of people just walking around the city because when I want to visualize, I can get a more accurate picture of where I'm going. So it's like I already been to this place before I even get there. And this is what I did when I went to London. Already when I got off the airplane there, I knew exactly. It didn't feel new to me because I've already been there in my mind so many times. And you might think, okay, what does this have to do with health and business? Well, it's everything, because everything starts in our mind first. So before you can live to 100 years old, before you can lose that 20 pounds, it first starts in your mind. Greatness all starts in our mind. And part of the journey of greatness is usually we're going to have low moments, or we're going to have moments that are uncomfortable or not so good. And sometimes people might count us out. Sometimes people might write us off. And this is where the fun part starts, because this is where reinvention happens. And my guest is the epitome of reinvention. So I'm speaking with Andre Spence today. He is a YouTube guru, as I'm going to call him, a YouTube guru, a excellent content creator, but he's also someone who helps individuals relocate to a better life, to a higher quality of life. And I'm going to use the word geo arbitrage. And so this is something that new entrepreneurs should really keep in mind, where you are going somewhere where your dollars are going to extend more, which is going to help you get your business off the ground. It's going to help you invest more and just really improve your overall well-being. So I've been rambling enough. Andre, how's it going, man?
Absolutely great. Having a wonderful, wonderful day. Today is actually Independence Day here in Colombia. So everybody's celebrating Independence Day today. So that's a good thing. Having a wonderful day. And I'm glad to be and appreciate being on your show, man. You appreciate all that you do, especially in the realm of mental health and entrepreneurship.
Well, I appreciate that, that you joined me today on this. So happy Independence Day. So what type of festivities goes on during this Independence Day?
They usually have the parades. South America is known for its music. So, and Cali, Colombia, where I am right now, is the salsa capital of the world. So there's going to be a lot of salsa dancing and
Oh,
celebrating
man.
throughout the year. Plus, this was the year for a new presidency. They actually elected their first Democrat as president in Colombian history. So he'll be sworn in a couple of months. And the first Afro-Colombiana will be vice president of the country this year. So a lot is going on this year to celebrate today. So there's going to be a lot of things going on and taking place.
So I love salsa. So I got to ask, how's your salsa moves?
Oh, come on now. I'm with my wife and her family. I don't have a choice. But so I'm really good. It's kind of funny when people meet me at the dance, when I go out dancing, and they think that, okay, he's another American. He doesn't know how to salsa. But when I get on the dance floor, after one dance, every female wants to dance now because they're like, oh, he can really dance. And so I love salsa music just like you, and the dancing. And there's so many variations of it around the world, whether it be Cuban, whether it be Puerto Rican, whether it be New York style, or whether it be here in Cali, Colombia.
Man, my first salsa dancing experience, I was in medical school. I was in New York, and we were at this Latin bar and everything. And I'm just sitting there getting my drinking, right? And I'm just nodding my head, so I can keep a little rhythm with my head and everything, right? And I guess this girl thinks, oh, he's keeping a rhythm, so let's bring him out here. So she brings me out there, and she starts dancing and everything, and I'm like, I don't know what this is, right? And so I start trying to a little bit, but I look like I'm just marching. I'm just one of those soldiers who's just marching.
Right.
And so after that moment, I was like, okay, I'm going to take some lessons, and I'm going to at least know what to do a little bit when it comes to the salsa, the bachata, merengue, all that stuff.
Merengue, yes. And they love the fact that you try. It'll amaze you here in South America, whether it be Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, Ecuador, and so forth, that they appreciate the fact that you actually get on the dance floor and try the dances. They think that that's more attractive than just coming on there as a professional, because they just think it's so cute that we're just so green on the dance floor, and so that they could be the one to teach us per se.
Yeah, it's a huge confidence booster. And
Oh
I
yeah.
would say that well, it's a huge confidence booster just to go out there. And the thing I appreciate about salsa dancing and salsa clubs, unlike other clubs, is that it's perfectly okay just to go talk to any girl, and
Yes.
they're a lot more inviting. And this is what I was
Yes.
telling my friend, like, go to the salsa clubs and stuff if you want to meet women and everything,
Yes.
and just to socialize. It's a lot easier because it's expected. Whereas in club, it's like this barrier and all this extra stuff going on. So
Correct. Correct. And that veers off into getting to know me. I'm originally from Tampa, Florida, born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. Originally from Tampa, Florida. I mean, born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. But before I moved to Colombia, I lived in Tampa for 14 years. And my journey began, in Detroit in the 80s, just like everybody, a lot of young people, once the Reagan administration flooded the community with a particular type of substance. Many of us, I remember the guy that when I got started, my rent was due and I didn't have any money. And my mom called one of her old hustler friends. She didn't give me the money. She just called one of her old hustler friends. And she said, and he said, "Hey, I'm not going to give you any money, but I'm going to give you something that can get you the money." He said, "But I'm going to tell you something, son. It's not what I'm about to give you that's the addiction." He said, "The money is the addiction." He said, "Don't forget what I'm telling you now." And I wasn't hearing what he was saying. Okay, hey, is this going to help me pay my rent? So I took what he gave me, I sold it, and I couldn't believe it. In 15 minutes, I had my rent money, I had grocery money, and I had money for my pocket. At this time period, I'm kind of like a 17-year-old because I just moved out, but my low day job wasn't paying enough. So what I ended up doing was he was right. I went back to him and I said, "Hey, I got extra money. Can I get some more of that?" And he was like, because people want it. And he was like, "Okay, now remember what I said. It's not what I'm giving you that's addictive. When you're watching other people, that's not the addiction. The addiction is the money." And next thing you know, I was hooked on what we called in Detroit the red money instead of the green money. And as time progressed, the red money was good, progressive, going great, going state to state, traveling different locations and so forth. And I'll never forget that we're sitting indoors and we're watching Rap City on BET. And I hear the steps rumble like an earthquake. And one of the guys look out the window. One of my friends look out the window. He just sits back and he just sits back in the seat like he saw nothing. He just looked at us and said, "The feds." And before we knew it, doors were being kicked in. I shoot to the kitchen window. I'm about to jump out the kitchen window. They're coming out of the basement. They've been in the basement all morning. We found out that they had been in the basement all morning, waiting for the call, which we rarely went in the basement. And I'm about to jump out the window, and all of a sudden I see police dogs and I see rifles aimed toward me. And one guy just said, "Son, please don't do it. Don't, son, please don't jump out that window. We do not want to do this. This is not what we came here for." And but during that time period, I didn't realize that. And going back to mental health, some of the things that your community teaches you that's okay, that's why you do it. Because mentally you've been programmed to think certain behavior is okay. And so you embrace it because everybody else is doing it, or because of the red money, or whatever it was in my case. Once I was, the judge said, "Oh yeah, give me 10 years real quick." and during that time period of incarceration, I mean, I'm like I mentioned to you before, my first flight ever, I was handcuffed in shackles along with 200 other guys, and we're flying to El Reno, Oklahoma from where was it? To El Reno, from MCC Chicago downtown. They have a federal building for incarceration, and so first flight was in the feds. So I didn't have a chance to be scared of flights, so I had to get on. But during that time period, I actually had to realize that there were some things that need to change about me, and I had to accept. First of all, the first thing I had to accept that I was different. I was always an entrepreneur. I just took my entrepreneurship and shifted it in the wrong direction with the wrong product. For example, Jay-Z once said, I sold keys, I guess I could sell CDs. In other words, he'd always had that entrepreneurial spirit or that mindset, but he had the wrong product to embrace that or to take advantage of that entrepreneurial spirit. So I realized, okay, this is who I am. I just did it wrong. Second thing I had to do, I had to forgive my past. I couldn't go back and say, oh man, I wish I had done this. I wish I had done that, and so forth and so forth. So that's the second thing I had to do, was mentally forgive my past. Third thing I did was prepare myself. This is all during incarceration, prepare myself for my future. And part of preparing myself for my future, the first couple of years of incarceration, I'll tell you how you get over the mental gymnastics or programming that I was up under. I first said that dealing in illegal pharmaceuticals wasn't good for me the first few years. So I was over it for me. But then it took a couple more years for me to embrace the fact that it wasn't good for anybody in my community to be doing that. Sometimes you say, well, that's just not meant for me, but if my boys do it, it's good. Mm-hmm. No, you have to come to a conclusion that it's not good at all for anyone, because look at all these young men that are in this situation like you, Andre. It's not good for any of them. It's not good for any of us. And so all these individuals that you're surrounded with, Andre, in this federal location, these are potential entrepreneurs. It's not like these guys weren't entrepreneurs. They were entrepreneurs. And to end up in the feds, you had to somewhat be successful at what you were doing. You just were doing it in the wrong way. So it took me a couple of years to year 6 or 7 to realize that it wasn't good for anybody in my community to be doing this, not just me. Once I got to that point, go ahead if you have any questions.
Oh, no.
Once I got to that point, year 6 or 7 of that 10, I realized, okay, what am I going to do? And I was like, I remember I was in prayer and I was like, okay, God, what do you want me to do? And I'm bawling. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do in my life now. Now I don't have that mindset, what I'm going to go forward with. And I distinctly remember the spirits in my heart saying, read a book. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I don't have anything to go to now. Read a book. But you don't. And I'm coming with all these excuses, right? Read a book. And I knew it wasn't in my heart like, you need to read the Bible, son. Because I was already reading the Bible, the Quran, and other motivational books. And at that time period was Les Brown out, just coming out. Jim Rohn was out. I was reading his book. Brian Tracy, I was reading a lot of his books. Zig Ziglar, I was heavy Zig Ziglar fan. So I already had the motivation going to me. That's what helped clean up the first 7 years. You know, the who was around? John Osteen, Joe's dad, was still alive. I was listening to John.
I've never heard of him.
Yeah, John was the one that it wouldn't be a mega church if it wasn't for John. So I was listening to John, Kenneth Hagin, who was the father of the faith, my modern day faith movement. I was listening to Joyce Meyer when she was only on the radio. She wasn't even on television yet. So at that time period, so that first 7 years caused me to clean who I was up. So that's cool. You're a clean dude, but you don't have no direction of what you're going. And so the first book, read a book, that I picked up was Terry McMillan's Mama. The second book I picked up was Waiting to Exhale. And then I started picking up other books that had to do with travel, and other books that had to do with transformation and life manifestation. So I started and I didn't realize at this time period, mind you, I'm a high school dropout. I dropped out like in the 12th grade a couple months before. Why? Right before graduation. Why? Because the red money was so good. I don't need this diploma. Curse it, 12 years. And so now I've got to go back to now. I didn't realize that the universe and God were getting me in the habit of education, of reading. And so I'm reading everything positive that I can pick up. I'm not reading Donald Gowan's How to Be a Pimp books. I'm reading anything that's positive and enlightening. And so after that, what ended up happening is I went back to school, got my education. Then at that time period in the feds, you could get your BA. So I went ahead and went to college while I was in the feds and got my BA in business management and marketing. But that wasn't it. They asked me to be the public speaker for graduation ceremony, and I was like, oh man, I've never spoken ever. And so my instructor, one of my professors, because they would have college professors from the local university come in, and so my college professor, she helped me to write my speech. Stood up there, gave my speech, was great. Then I started taking public speaking courses that they had while I was in there. I was such a good public speaker that by the time I got ready to leave in the last 2 years, they were actually sending me out to juvenile centers, into youth centers, into Boys and Girls Club, and to high schools, where they have all the kids coming to the auditorium or into the gymnasium. That was me. They would come to see speaking. So I'm literally still incarcerated, but I'm traveling across the country, actually doing speaking engagements while I'm incarcerated.
I didn't even know they do that.
I didn't even know they did that. I'm literally sitting down but I didn't realize how much incarceration. Now you got to get past the institutionalization that incarceration had caused. And I didn't realize that I was institutionalized until one day I'm having breakfast. The chief of police is in front of me. A local judge is on the left of me at breakfast. And the prison guard, because I always kept a guard with me, was on the left-hand side of me. No keys or anything, because, at that time period, they knew who I'd become. They've been following me for 10 years throughout all the locations I transferred to, because in the feds at that time period, you could transfer to different prisons and break your time up every 6 months. So everybody in all the prison systems had already known me. They were like, okay, this is the dude that was here. He was there. He was there. I actually became a school teacher while I was in the feds. I helped over 2 years. I helped over 200 men get their GED, and I hadn't had one person fail getting their high school diploma or GED while I was a teacher. Mm. So, and all this while incarcerated, right? And so, but this what goes to show you what mental transformation and seeing the other side of your abilities. One of my statements that I used to tell my students was, and I still tell people this: don't lose it, use it. Some people are very boisterous or bombastic in their speech, but then when it's time to say something important, all of a sudden they're shy and bashful and aloof. I say, don't lose it. Use that ability to have a strong personality, but develop it in a way that it can be used in a positive way. Some guys are just, they have a charming personality. Don't lose it, use it. Now you have the ability to network and make connections with people that other people just don't know how to walk in the room and command a room like you can. Don't
Absolutely.
Lose it, use it. We just use our good for evil. You don't have to use it for evil anymore. And so, so what ends up happening is I'm public speaking, and I'm traveling, so forth and so forth, and I'm having breakfast with these affluent gentlemen of law enforcement, a judge, chief police, and the prison guard. And I'll never forget the first time. This is how I realized I was institutionalized. I hadn't heard the sound of forks, spoons, and plates in almost 8 years at that time period. And I'm sitting down, and the clanging was so nerve-wracking. I literally had to talk to myself while I'm talking to these guys and smiling. My hand is almost anxiously shaking because the sound of a fork going across a plate was so unfamiliar for me. And this is the first time I've actually told this story in a while. It was that the sound of just ting, 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 ting. My brain just had not heard that in so long. And it was like a slow anxiety was taking over. And I had to literally, Andre, put the jelly on the bread, put the knife to the side, pick up the fork and cut I literally had to walk myself through that. So even though I became deprogrammed from my past, once again, we're talking about the future, I had to I didn't realize I had to reprogram myself for the future that I want to have. And just subtle things that individuals may take for granted many that are incarcerated have to reprogram themselves. I give you a perfect example. The first time they took me out public speaking was during Christmas time. What do you see out in public during Christmas time? Lights. You're in the feds. You don't see anything but beige, brown, blues, green grass. That's it. You're not seeing any color this, color that. You may see some colored pencils or some paints, that person is using, but you're not seeing colors. So that was another thing psychologically that let me know. Number two, that let me know that I was institutionalized was the fact that I had to adjust mentally to lights. It wasn't like it was a Christmas light. It was a Christmas light. The greens were green. Everything was ultra vibrant, if you will, almost like a baby coming out for the first time and actually seeing colors for the first time. That was the mental gymnastics that I had to go through. It took me a couple of trips just to get accustomed to seeing colors again. Nobody ever talks about that when it comes to incarceration. It really did. So there isn't a mental adjustment to when you are leaving after so long. So by the time year 10 comes, I'm like, oh man, okay. I had actually created a resume. I had created a game plan. I had a game plan so thick of week 1, you're going to do this. Week 2, you're going to do that. I had literally taken my last 2 years and created the first 2 years of incarceration. I said, these last 2 years are dedicated of post-incarceration. These last 2 years are dedicated to post-incarceration, the first 2 years. So I knew what my life should fall in place like. And I refused to let my number and numbers, plural, because the funny part is I had state cases that were pending while I'm doing federal time. And I heard by way of rumor that if you reach out to the state judge, they'll run it with your federal time so you don't have state time waiting for you when you get out. So what I did was, the year before I got ready to leave, I reached out, actually 2 years, I reached out to the state judge where I had state cases waiting for me. And I told the judge my story and what was going on and how I changed and how life had improved and so forth and so forth. And I had given him the warden's information if he wanted to validate it. And what the judge did from that particular state, the state of Ohio was one. Remember I said I'm all over the place. Mm-hmm. The state of Ohio said, hey, listen, we contacted the warden. We've heard about your story, so forth and so forth. We could run your state. We're going to actually squash your state time. So you don't have to worry about your state time. You don't have any state situations that you have to worry about. You're good. So when you leave out of the feds, you're great. So I've got the game plan. I've got I created the game plan for 2 years. I got the first 2-year game plan. I'm implementing it except for one thing. 6 months before I get ready to get out, what am I going to do economically or as far as a career is concerned? So all the change, all the great things that had happened because I was doing positive things. And I didn't know this. My grandfather had died while I was incarcerated.
Oh.
And in his will, he left me $20,000 and 20 acres of land. So I had a financial foundation to go back to. So that was the good part. And so it left me with a financial foundation to go to. And I was a wiser young man in regards to that. So let's fast forward. I actually became I know I like sales. I'm just not going to do the wrong type of sales. So I got into all type of sales, from Kirby vacuum cleaners to anything that was over the phone. I just got off at the sales, honing my craft more than anything. And then I said, okay, I said, what can I do with the skills that I had? I said, I loved helping and working in education, but I knew that as soon as they put my fingerprint down, oh, you can't become a school teacher out here in public. Sorry, son. So I knew I couldn't do that. I knew I wanted to do sales. Okay, what's a combination of education and sales? An academic college recruiter. So for 20 years after that, I was not only a public speaker and a part of Toastmasters International, but I also was a academic college recruiter for several schools across the country. So, and I never had a problem with my when I hear guys talk about, well, my number held me back, or I didn't get a chance, my opportunity in life, but the white man, this and that. I never had one of those moments because I believed that it was all up in here more than out here. I knew that if this got me the negative life that I had, and I was successful in that negative life, it was going to be this that made me successful in a positive life. It was all this. It was between the ears. It had nothing to do with anybody else. I have had one moment that I could sit back and blame a culture, a law, policy, nothing that I could sit back and say, well, if it wasn't for this policy, if it wasn't for this particular group of people, I never had one of those moments because I never allowed those type of moments to impact me. So for 20 years, I was an academic college recruiter. I did everything from scholarship programs to public speaking to helping kids fill out scholarships. On Saturdays, I would have meetings in churches and help the parents and the children fill out the scholarship forms. All these things I would do. And I was making good money, but I wasn't complete, because I always would reflect back on all those traveling books and adventures that I read in the late night hours, whether it was a guy that was sailing on boats or whether there was a female and she was going on her adventures, like she was a Tomb Raider. But at the end of the day, I said, you know what? One of my coworkers, she teased me. She said, you always talking about traveling, but you won't get your passport. And I was like, I'll get my passport. And I said, watch this. I said, okay, Miss teased me. I said, I'm about to print out the passport application for both of us. And so during my lunch break, I went to CVS. Now, mind you, I got a good life. I'm not one of those guys that life was bad and I can't get a date and so forth and so forth. Life was pretty good. And at that time period, I just, even though I had gone through a divorce, excellent marriage, great stepkids, never had a problem. I don't have any children. Great stepkids. We were married 14 years. It's just that we grew apart because there were some things that we kind of ignored about each other's drive, business drive, that caused us to separate. I had desires and drive in regards to business. She had drives and desires. And you can't have two people that are too heavily driven by ambition together. Some people say that they want that, but I'm telling you, it doesn't work. You have to have a balance, said the Libra. And so what ends up happening is we're still cool to this day. We talk periodically, but it just didn't work. So I'm free as far as relationships. I'm not dating anybody. I'm free. And I go to CVS to go pay $12 to get my passport photo. I take the application that I filled out. On my lunch break, I go to the post office and I get, because at CVS, I got the money orders and everything, the blank money orders. I got my birth certificate and I ship everything off. And I'm thinking this, you're not going to get your passport. One of the reasons I stalled on my passport was this. I actually believe because they took away my right to vote in a particular state, that there's no way you're going to get a passport, because that's far more important. They don't give passports to ex-felons. Impossible. So I'm sitting back thinking, right, once I get the application back or the rejection, at least I'll be able to see what the rejection was. And if I need to get anything expunged or anything removed, I can actually do that. That's what my whole game plan was. But when I get the little blue book in the mail, crying like a newborn, I'm looking like they actually gave me a passport. And that's when my spidey senses began to kick in and say, there are probably other men and women out there that don't even know that they can do this. And so I started researching what can cause you to allow you to get your passport, what can get your passport revoked, and what will allow you to investigate if anything rejects you, how you can get that resolved. And so I've done a couple of videos. Actually, my last video was about that on our YouTube channel. And so what I end up doing is start to encourage a lot of people. And I'm getting emails and I'm getting comments in the comment section. Thank you very much. I didn't know this. I'm telling friends about this, because a lot of people didn't know that unless you're on probation, parole, in the middle of a case, whether it be civil or criminal, like if you're in the middle of a divorce case, you're not going to get a passport. and disappear and say, I'm going to take all the money and I'm going to Aruba.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that. So if you're in the middle of any type of case, parole, probation, a case, and if you use your passport to commit as a tool of a crime. So, like the television show Locked Up Abroad. Well,
Mm-hmm.
once they get done from being locked up in Taiwan or wherever, and they come back to the States, yeah, they got to get that passport up because they used it as a tool of a
Mm-hmm.
crime. That puts 98% of all people that have been incarcerated eligible to get a passport. And most people don't even know. I'm like, wait a minute, you take away my rights to vote, but you actually let me get a passport? So you're like, okay, cool. And so even though I had a big house in the suburbs of Riverview and Tampa, even though I had the 70,000 Ford F-150 Harley Davidson edition truck, even though I make about $70,000, $80,000 a year, even though I am single and I got all the gorgeous ladies in the state of Florida, and so my closest friends were Colombian. And so I'm just like you. I found out about salsa dancing in South America by way of going to Colombia dance clubs, Latin clubs with Puerto Ricans, and going to their festivals. And they were like, man, and I started traveling to Panama, to Mexico, I'm taking cruises to, the Bahamas, St. Thomas, St. Martin, St. Lucia. I'm going to all these places. And they're like, you're traveling everywhere. You need to go to Colombia. You need to go to our country. You go to our country, you're going to get married. And I'm like, you're going to meet beautiful women in South America. They're educated, blah, 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 blah. And they're very traditional and loving. And when I got here, one thing they say about Colombia, never, ever make Colombia the first country you go to once you get your passport, because it will be the last country you go to once you get your passport. Because you compare every country to Colombia, like, I like Portugal, but this is not Colombia. So I like Brazil, but this is not Colombia. So, and that gives you the where we stand today. My wife Andre and I started several YouTube channels. The main one is Love Crossing Borders TV on YouTube. We've got a political channel, Mostly Money, where we assist individuals in understanding the politics and the policies that are coming down the line in Washington regarding our monies, whether it be Social Security, whether it be stimulus, whether it be tax rebates, whether it be gas relief checks, any type of money, even online job opportunities. We try to encourage individuals to take advantage or find out about any type of monies that are going on by way of the government putting funds out there, child tax credits, VA, getting a better cost of living adjustment for this 2023 year that's coming up. All those things, the future of Social Security. And so Mostly Money TV is the other channel. My wife has Andrea Wallace TV, to where a lot of guys want to understand South America through the eyes of a South American woman. And so they ask her a tons of questions about dating and relationships, and if I come there, and cost of living and things like that. Then we've got Travel Unraveled, which is a music channel, which is just a relaxed jazz, chill channel that
that sounds nice.
Yeah, I don't have to do too much work with it. It's just a channel that does this thing, and YouTube pays very, very well, six-figure well. So we've been doing good. And when you're living in South America and the dollar is worth $4.50 per se in pesos, you're doing pretty good. And so we have monies now to invest in property over here and investments over there and so forth and so forth. And so all that bouncing off into, once again, what we were talking about. Once you build your YouTube audience, they're interested in getting consultations from you on how to start a YouTube channel. Or if you're living in another country, or whatever skill you have, such as you have podcasting, there are people that want to ask you about podcasting. And so we do a lot of consultations. And then you got Patreon, and then you've got t-shirt sales, people that want to support your brand, and cups and mugs and things like that. And so it's and then you got this everything, people sending money throughout the day, throughout the week, from Cash App, and just all those things that you saw take place with Kevin Samuels. Not to that degree, of course, but it is the same thing. It's the first time. Actually, we've been doing this for 3.5 years. This past weekend was the first time I took a day off in at least 3 days off straight in the last 3.5 years because I enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
And that's the story of Andre Spence.
Wow. There's a lot to, unravel here. There's a lot of things that just went through my head there. And one is, wow, the YouTube thing. And I love hearing that because a lot of times when people think of being an entrepreneur, they immediately think that you have to have this startup or you have to go have this company and go talk to VCs or any of that stuff. And it's like, no, whatever you can be passionate about something and knowledgeable about something, and you can continue to build on that knowledge, and you can make a damn good living off of it. In fact, that's a better living than most of the entrepreneurs out here who have these startups and stuff that are, so I love to hear that. And that opened my eyes to some things. I did not know YouTube was that kind of a beast myself at all.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And, but what I hear when I hear with the prison, so I'm always curious how some people come out and they thrive, after that. They use that opportunity to really just reinvent themselves, and others, they go back in there. And it's the hardware and the software. And,
correct.
And the last thing here, which we can talk about a little bit, is that you're living a good life. And I can relate to this because people ask, Julian, why did you leave medical school? You're going to be this doctor. You're going to have this prestigious title and all this stuff. Why'd you leave this to do this thing that's unproven, uncertain, and will take years to really come to fruition? And I think this is the trap of being in the middle. And I always tell people that being in the middle class, I grew up lower middle class. It's actually harder to a certain extent than coming from poverty or growing up super rich. The super rich, they have to preserve a legacy. So they have this already established, this culture created that they want to preserve. The people that come from poverty or really hard circumstances, they have an edge. They hate that. When you're in the middle, life's not so bad, but it's also not so good, but it's just good enough to just keep you coasting. So you can just kind of drift. And so that's why I talk about that. And that's what it sounds like there, that you were in the middle and people question. It's like, well, you got a nice car, you got a nice house, got a good job. What more could you want? But you just have this feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of funny that you would say that. I often say this about when guys ask me, what made you feel comfortable with relocating outside of the United States? Just like with you leaving and moving towards your goal. I often tell people these two things. The first thing that I often tell them is I told myself, and I wrote it down, what is the worst things that could happen other than physical? Physical is always the worst of the worst. So let's not go there. Let's not swing the pendulum, said the Libra, to that extreme. But what's the worst thing other than health that could happen? Okay, the worst thing to me was I went back to the States, I blew off my resume, I made more money, and I left the United States again. That would be the worst scenario for me. Is the worst scenario, Andre, is making money, then you're good. That's the worst. That's the worst thing in my mind that I could imagine, that if I just all of a sudden went broke, everything just faltered. And this was at that time period when I didn't know about online job opportunities, and I didn't know about remote work and remote businesses that were for sale and things like that. I didn't know about any of those things that I know now. This was week one, still in the States. And so once I got past, because a lot of times people mentally, once again, it's up here, the mental gymnastics that they put themselves through is that they never take the time out to say, what's the worst thing that could happen if I start jogging in the morning for my health? What's the worst thing that could happen if I go and ask my boss for a raise? What's the worst thing that could happen if I told my spouse, hey, let's go on a vacation over here this year instead of over here? So the first thing that I did, I grasped hold and mentally played out the worst thing of getting back on a plane after being in different countries around the world, going back to the United States, blowing off my resume, which is a great resume, getting employment, because I'm still getting hit up years later for people are asking me to come to work for them or and manage their teams. And I'm like, do you not realize I don't live in the United States anymore? Uh, but that was the worst scenario. And since making money was the worst case scenario, I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I did, I took 2 years to actually get realize it was 2 to 3 years before I actually officially saw the fruition of me living full time here. It wasn't like tomorrow morning I'm out of here. It was, okay, how much am I going to have to live by? How much will I have to live economically? So I made sure I had enough money for 2 years. I was like, Andre, you're intellectually adapt enough to get to the point that if you can't create a game plan to make money in another country in 2 years, you should be stuck in the States with a regular 9 to 5 like everybody else. There is nothing about you that says entrepreneurship. If you can't create an entrepreneurial game plan and blueprint and bring it to fruition in 2 years to where you have no worries, you got the economics to not worry about bills and any of those things. You've got that money put to the side, 2 years worth. And you're telling me that in 2 years, you couldn't have written that a great American novel. You can create a course. You couldn't start public speaking somewhere. You couldn't start doing something online or digital marketing like we're doing now, because that's all YouTubing and Instagramming and TikToking and all those things. It's just marketing yourself digitally and a product digitally. You can create anything in 2 years, Andre. Here's what you need to do. Go back to the States, sit in a cubicle, and don't move, because you don't deserve to be in another country. You don't deserve to live that fruitful life if you can't do it in 2 years. And so that's what I told myself. And so within that 2 year game plan, I started learning about online job opportunities. So I'm doing little online jobs, so forth and so forth. The bills are being paid. I'm not making a lot, but I'm putting together my game plan. And a friend of mine who was a successful YouTuber, still successful, he was here at this time period. My wife and I were still dating. We were about to get married. And he said, you guys need a YouTube channel. We're sitting in there just relaxing, right? And he said, you guys need a YouTube channel. And I'm like, and this was Ace Live. And Ace said, I said, what are you talking about, man? Andrea looked at, and yes, it's me and my wife are Andre and Andrea, ironically. And so he was looking like, he said, you guys need a YouTube channel. I was like, and why do we need a YouTube channel? He said, because do you know how many men and women would love to see follow the journey of a guy that made it successfully outside the United States? The good relationship. You guys are interracial, so there are interracial couples that would love to follow you. There are couples that are outside the country that will want to follow you. You're not young, so people they're over 50 will want to follow you and see what life is like over 50 if they retired. Intercoastal, you're intergenerational. You're 50. At that time period, I was 50, and Andrea was like 23, 24, and in South America, to have a mature old soul wife who's so happened to be chronologically young is common. It's nothing. It's nothing here to where things are taboo in the United States. How you're 50 and your wife is 20. That's the United States. That's North America. This is South America, baby. And it's a completely different game plan, as you may see in Europe, as you well know. And so we said, okay, and this is what I did. Me, what's the worst case scenario? Mm-hmm. And so I sat back and I told myself, okay, let's give this a 5-year game plan.
I love that.
Because I love giving stuff expiration dates. I always say, give your plans an expiration date like spoiled milk. Mm-hmm. And we all know how spoiled milk smells when it's like, oh, that it's over. It's done. You can't drink it. It's over. That's how I look at business. I always say, give it an expiration date to see if it's going to succeed, if you need to do any tweaking or changing, if you need to be patient. And so I said, okay, let's give it a 5-year game plan.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Just to stop, I love that 5-year thing, because within those 5 years, so much is going to change. Like, I remember my day one compared to where I am now, and everything has changed, from market demographics, from the services offered, from just the whole mentality. It's everything is different. I don't even recognize myself 4 years ago, even 3 years ago. Everything's changing. So I think a lot of times we get caught up in the especially the online space. We see these 60-day programs, or these 30-day things to like make six figures in 30 days, get a six-pack in 5 weeks. And I mean, there's outliers for everything. There's no absolutes in this world, right? So there's a 0.001% out there person that does that. They have great genetics, and that's possible. But for most of us, I think so much stress will be alleviated. I'm talking to myself right now as well, because I'm very impatient. I think so much stress will be alleviated if we just expand that horizon. Not so much to where you lose that sense of urgency, but also enough to actually be realistic with what it actually takes.
Correct. And that's why I use expiration dates for everything. If I'm going to write a book, okay, Andre, you got 6 months. The expiration date is next February. That book should be finished, at least 90% of that book. You should just, at that time period, by next February, I want to see blah, blah, blah. If I haven't hit that goal, what was it that kept me from doing that? Because if I miss it this time, I might miss it again. So that's what I try to do.